but it's really important that we value your time and respect your time for your schedule for today's session. It's a second in our series of Being a Good Relative, looking at healthy opportunities for prevention. During the winter, we know that many times we are at this point in the calendar year, we're a little bit more isolated than usual, and sometimes we are not feeling our best, and we need to turn towards good, healthy opportunities in our life. And our culture provides us with a lot of great ways to stay connected to one another and to our culture. And so I want to thank you all again for joining us. And I'm going to ask for everybody to make sure you've muted your microphones at this time as we begin our time together, but you will have an opportunity throughout the session to ask our presenter questions or share some of your thoughts. And as we get started, you're welcome to post in the chat who you are, where you're coming from, where you're joining us from, your tribal affiliation. It'd be really helpful so that we can get to know who's online with us today. And as we do that, I'm going to share my screen, hopefully, if I can get there properly. And you can see where we begin today. Again, if I can get a thumbs up from somebody to let me know that you're able to see my screen. Thank you. I can get to the first one, that'd be really great. Thank you, Steve. Well, today's December 20th, and as we move forward, it's really important to recognize the people on the line, the people who've joined us with the Native Center for Behavioral Health at the University of Iowa. I know I have some colleagues on the line, so thank you all for joining. If you're a part of our team there at the university, thank you. If you're serving in the field of prevention science, thank you also. It's important work that we're all doing in some form or fashion, serving our Native communities. I'm going to try and minimize this. Just a few housekeeping rules. Since most of you have muted your mics so we can get started, know that you're always welcome to post questions or comments in the chat room at any time, and I'll be mindful to look at them and share some of those thoughts or questions if you have them with our presenter today. And we'll be respectful of your time. We'll go for about an hour and a half for today's session so that you can return to your work schedules or other plans for the afternoon. Depending on where you're coming from, it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Central Standard Time, as we join you from the University of Iowa. The map that you see here before you focuses on the Prevention Technology Transfer Center network. We are one of 2 national offices. Our office has a very specific focus with American Indian and Alaska Native communities, tribal communities, rural and urban. And we're just grateful for everybody who chooses to serve our Native people, chooses to be a part of the journey with us and help us lead healthier lives. The National American Indian Alaska Native Prevention Office is supported by a grant from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. The content of this event is the creation of the presenters, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian Alaska Native Prevention Technology Transfer Center. After today's event, it's going to be real important that you get some follow-up information. As I'm trying to read some of the notes, I've enabled the closed caption, so hopefully you'll be able to see that on the screen as well. After today's event, you should be able to get a follow-up email with a link to the presentation slides and the recording. Because we are recording this, it's really important that you're aware of that. If you choose not to be part of it because it's recorded, you're welcome to sign off at this time. We hope that you do stay. In addition to that, it's really important to our funders that we are able to share what your thoughts are, how much you appreciate the information that's being presented today, and the services that our office provides. So here on the screen, you have 2 ways to do the evaluation survey after the event. You have the QR code on the screen, as well as the hyperlink there at the bottom. And I will share this throughout the presentation a few times in the chat box and at the end of the session today. You're always welcome to ask questions in the chat box if you have them. Although we are gathered virtually today, it's really important to our team that we give acknowledgement to our tribal lands, our ancestral lands. And so at this time, I'd like to invite you all to read the statement that's on the screen for you all. It was created by 3 of my colleagues, Ella Driscoll, Keely Driscoll, and Sean Bear. So you're welcome to read that quietly to yourselves for just a few moments. I'm Dr. Allison Bays, and I serve in the Prevention Center. And what is really important to our team is that we pull together our resources with our Native communities and share great information that helps us in the area of prevention. And one of the things our team did some time ago was they created a social wellness and prevention, a document, because we know that so many of us at times in our lives are isolated and feel disconnected to one another. And so here's a resource that's available on our website, and I have the link for you on the screen as well. Just to really consider, how do we stay connected to our culture? How do we stay connected to our families and to one another, and the importance of that to lead healthy lives? As I mentioned, we're coming from the University of Iowa, and although that is where I work, my family is back home in Texas. I come from the Tapilam Powhatan Nation, and so being with family is really important to us in our home and figuring out ways to stay connected. And so this series was born out of ideas such as that and maintaining social wellness in the field of prevention science. We had our first session a few weeks ago where we spoke of caring for ourselves as we transition into winter. Jean's prayer spoke to that exact idea. How do we care for others and take care of others, but also the importance of taking care of ourselves in that moment that we lose that connection and we don't take care of ourselves. It makes our jobs difficult to help others. So it's really important to allow ourselves to be kind to ourselves and take care of ourselves also. Today, it's weaving our culture into our healing as we carry on our traditions. And I'll introduce our presenter in just a few moments. In January, we'll have sessions 3 and 4, using art and tradition to tell our stories. And then on the 31st of January, we'll have telling our stories through songs and the written word, because we know the importance of storytelling to our tribal communities. And in February, we'll have our last 2 sessions. One about how do we care for our elders as we continue to remember how they cared for us and continue to do so, even in their elderly stages of life. And our last one is, how do we pull this all together, connecting to our culture across the lifespan throughout our journey? How do we stay connected? How do we look for healthy ways to keep moving forward in a good journey? And so we'll have a lot of wonderful opportunities to share and learn from our presenters and share part of our life story. Today we have our featured presenter, and she's going to introduce herself, I believe, but I would like to just say a few things to her or about her, because I find the opportunities that I've had to speak with her and learn from her have been very enriching in my journey. And with that, I know Tanaba Atloniki Natani is going to be sharing about her connection to her culture, her service to our country, her role as a mother, a wife, a daughter, a grandmother, and everything in between in all aspects of her life. She's done so many things through the connection to her culture. As a Dene woman, she's been connected through her weaving. And most recently, she received a National Endowment of the Arts Award for folk and traditional arts. And with that, I'd like to share with you a little insight into who she is, and then let her begin by introducing herself.
Wait, I don't think we have the sound, Allison. You have to hit the share audio or share sound button before you share that screen.
Okay, Steve, I had it earlier.
Oh yeah, maybe it clicked off. It would just be, it's a little box that's down in the, I think it's in the left-hand corner of your share screen before you choose the screen that you want to share. You just go to screen share,
Okay,
and then there should be a little box that says
yes,
share audio. You
yes.
click that, then we are good. I can't wait to see this. I'm excited.
Here it goes. Let's try it again.
I grew up in Fort Defiance, Arizona, and it wasn't until I was about 10 years old we made the move back here to our ancestral lands. My parents were sent to go to school off our lands here. The boarding school wanted to destroy their traditional upbringing.
Is it not playing, Steve?
Yeah, it stopped.
But
it's
they
back
were
now.
still connected to their traditional way of life. When I was young, I came home from school and my mom had a loom set up for me. And she told me, today you're going to learn how to weave. After high school, I joined the military and my weaving stopped for a moment. Around 2 years into my active duty, I was in the Philippines, and one Saturday morning I went out to a market and I saw woven mats, and I touched every one of them. I touched every one of them and I said, I'm a weaver. I know about this. I took that as a sign from the deities. I need to come home. I came back and I started ranching the sheep and I started weaving. When I began to raise the sheep, they became my teacher. And I became a student. They became my children. I had to care for them just like I would my family. Now there's a lot of challenges. The rains are less. Our sheep are now in the Chusca Mountains at a higher elevation among the trees. Climate change has affected this way of life of having sheep. Good job. Doing good. I have 17 sheep now. We'll have to reduce, even maybe to 8, but we're not going to no sheep. If you're a rancher, you hang on to your sheep despite all the hardships. A Navajo weaving is made with a lot of spirituality. Hey, na, na, na. Hey, shin. When you're weaving, you are handling the warp, which represents rain, a vertical Navajo loom, which the bottom represents the earth, and the top represents the sky. The corners of the loom represent our four sacred mountain. The weaving has a spirit. The weaving has a heartbeat. As a Navajo traditional Diné woman, I have to find a way to keep this lifeway going because I have a daughter, I have a granddaughter, I have a community. Why do I walk this path as a Navajo weaver? It's my identity. The arts that are linked to our culture is very important. And it's very important that we tell that story.
Adadishi isto
Oh,
dalshin
inuit.
ikutin
Kana lasan lakan kuida dalchin.
So now you have a little glimpse into our presenter. And with that, I'd like to welcome Tanaba.
Thank you. I'd like to say I'm really happy to be invited to this panel to be a presenter and to share my stories, my experience, and provide possibly some inspiration to you, to each of you, and to be able to survive through these changing times, these tremendous times, whether we're in this season of the winter. It's always important, no matter what season it is to keep healthy. And one way that I have found that magic is through my work as a weaver. And before I go any further, I'd like to just introduce myself formally. I'm coming out from the Four Corners area, out from Table Mesa, near Shiprock. That's where my home is at. And I am Hawathlene, which is Mini Hogan clan. And I am born for Maideshkizhni, which is Coyote Pass clan. And my maternal grandparents are the Nake Dene, and paternal grandparents are the Tsenahabitni, the Steep Rock clan. And that introduction I just shared with you is what my late father, Leo Natani, that is what he instilled in me, is wherever we go as Dene people, when we interact with people that we're just meeting for the first time, we need to establish kinship. And then after you establish that, then your relationship of how you relate to one another begins. So my name is Tkanaba Natani, and I am a grandmother I am a weaver, and I am a rancher. I also am a daughter. My beloved mom, she is 85 years old, and she continues to this day to be my teacher, to be my mentor. She's a very clever, and she's very healthy. And I believe one of the reasons she's like that is because of our way of life with weaving, with ranching. Yeah, so there's, it's very important that we allow our thinking to exercise in different levels, and even our hands, and even our physical being. Most importantly, for us, from my mother's teaching, she always encourages our young kids when they're 5 years old, 4 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old, to begin teaching them to work with their hands. Because once you learn how to work with your hands, you wake your fingers up, and you're able to, for us in the wintertime, we do string games. You're able to create projects that just help your thinking. So that's who I am. I am a full-time weaver. I've been weaving for over, I learned how to weave when I was about 7 years old. And about, I would say 25 years ago, I started doing it on a professional level. And that's when I started raising the sheep also. So weaving is my primary work. And I like to weave traditional style weavings as well as contemporary style. And I think that's the healthiness of my mind, because we all need to grow. We all change in different ways. We all mature in different ways, different levels. So when I first started weaving, I used to weave regional patterns. And these patterns are they're kind of pre-made. There's already a way. There's a like a 2 gray hill pattern. It's geometric. There's a standard format. And around the Navajo, the different communities, there's a standard weaving design that represents that community. And then you decide what colors, the different shades to put in that design. However, for me, when I first started, that's how I started weaving regional patterns. And then as I started weaving about 20 years ago, I started changing those regional patterns into my own creativity, my own voice. And I have found that very gratifying. And that's part of my personal growth, my personal journey. And now I'd like to start with some slides that I created. Sometimes I'm asked where I get my inspiration from. And here, what you see is our famous pinnacle that's located out in the Four Corners. And this is the ship rock. Sebit is the name of it. And what that means is the rock with wings. Our culture tells us that this rock was once a big bird, and our twin warriors, they they were in a battle with this bird. So this beautiful pinnacle is behind my home at Table Mesa. At the end of the day, sometimes in the afternoon, mid-mornings, I'll go for a walk and I'll go toward the west, and this is what I see. Next slide. And this here is a common picture of me at my home on my ranch. The sheep usually follow me because I feed them, they know me, I haul water for them. And so at times they're in back of me, kind of trailing. And then I'll have my camera and I'll take a photograph. The weather out at Table Mesa right now is very cold. We live in the desert, in a desert area that there used to be a lot of forage, but with the climate change, the grass has become little to none, and slowly a desert is forming out there. So the land is very barren. And here's another beautiful photo of the kind of sheep I raise. And these are the Navajo Chiro. This is a heritage breed, and they have long fleece. Once a year, we shear them, and their fleece are like about anywhere from 10 inches to 12 inches. Staples, that's the length of them. And they come in 16 different natural color shades. If you look at the slide, you can see that there's some beautiful dark brown, there's a camel color, a lighter brown, different shades of brown. Sometimes when they all line up like that, and I have my camera, I'll take a photo of them. And I can kind of, because I work with them and I know them, I can tell you a little bit about their personality and which ones, whenever they are lambing, they'll have two, they throw twins, or they always throw males perhaps. Yeah, so these are my sheep here, and in the background you see Table Mesa. And I live just at the base, and you can see my home there also. And as I mentioned, this is my mom, my beloved mom, and her name is Sarah, and she's the one that taught me how to weave. Every day I'm learning from her. I'm so blessed that I have my morning coffees with her. We often have dinner and lunch together. This is a woman who is self-taught and who is an educator, who is a teacher, who is a survivor. And I'm so blessed to have my mom. It's so such a blessing for me. She can be harsh also, harshly loving. And one time I was just so in awe of her knowledge. And I told her, "Oh, Mom," I said, "I wish I could, the way you think, you're thinking, I wish I could put it in a ball and then put it in my pocket. And then I'll need it. I'll always need it," I said, "and I could, so it'll be in my pocket." And she said to me, "I'll do nothing in your pocket. I need to be up here." And then I said, "I give up." Yeah, so this is my mom, and this photograph here, we were on a Ferris wheel, and we were getting ready to ride the Ferris wheel together. And this here is, this is me, and this was taken in the summertime. And we took a field trip, kind of like a field trip to Canyon de Chelly. Canyon de Chelly is a place on the Navajo Nation in Arizona, on the western side of the Chusca Mountain Range. And this is the Spider Rock monument. This is where our Navajo weaving came from. This is the home of Spider Man and Spider Woman. And people pay homage to this site here. And this summer, we went and visit the birthplace of our Navajo weaving. So I took a photo of one of the many books that I have. The title of my presentation here is what keeps me healthy in my weaving journey. There's many different facets that keep me healthy. And one of them is learning, is doing independent study. And so I like to reference some of these books. This is just one of them, one of the many that I have. And I read about some of the weavings that were happening in the 1800s, 1700s, some of the patterns, how they developed, because that's important for me to inspire me, and also to incorporate some of those patterns in with my work. And it's also important that I educate my community on the Navajo about our weavings, because often the knowledge that we have is from the trading posts. It's not, it's a good knowledge from the trading post, but there's a deeper knowledge in with some of the research with the books. So this is a sample of a weaving that I had done this past year, and this was an anniversary shawl. So this is a type of weaving that I have developed where the weaving is rectangle in shape, and then it has fringes. And this weaving here is made from merino and silk wool. And so there's a horse on the side, and then on the top of the weaving is a heart. It's a continuous heart. If you follow the line of the heart, it's one strand. And that's a tribute to this 25-year anniversary that this customer ordered. This was a gift from her husband. So, and at the bottom, you see those, they kind of look like flower pots, perhaps. But what that is that's the 3 Swedish crowns. And I'm not sure if you can't see it from here, but there's some pearls in that as well. Or there's some, there's some texture in that to represent gemstones. And then the dollar horse on the side, and on the far left, you have the Norse symbol. So what I did is I did some research from the customers where they were from. So she was from Sweden, and her husband also was from around that area. And the bottom, the very bottom design is a design that you often see here on the Navajo, but you see that design also from across the border in the Zapotec weavings in Mesoamerica. You see that pattern also, but that pattern is representative of water, and it's also representative of a famous architecture. So this was an anniversary shawl that I created this past summer. And this is another weaving that I was weaving this summer, and you can see I'm still weaving it. There's about, maybe 2 inches left on that. And this here also was a shawl. When it was completed, I made fringes on the bottom, which is not common with Navajo weaving. You don't see fringes on them, only in the sash belts. But I created this particular style and I named it after my name, Tanaba. Tanaba shawl is what it's called. And it has patterns of a woman's blanket with the brown and chocolate brown stripes. Some might even think that this is like a chief's blanket, a men's shoulder blanket. It's in that style of a shoulder blanket, but it's made not as long, and the width of it is about 5 feet and about little over 2 feet in its height. So you can see some of my weavings, they can be very traditional and very contemporary. And here is my grandbaby. Oh, she's the love of my life. Here she saw me weaving and she started mimicking what I was doing. So as a traditional person, we like to allow our kids to touch the weaving, to handle the warp, to handle the tools, so that the spirit of those tools, of the weaving can transfer into her or him. If it was a little boy, I would allow him to also mimic the weaving, what I was doing. So I thought that this is a very cute photo. I have many snapshots of her, and it's my hope that my daughter and my granddaughter and our children continue to practice our weaving, our livelihood that our ancestors used to do. And this whole setup of the weaving, what you see, this is how the setup was for my great grandmothers and my great paternal grandmothers. The only thing different probably there would be the colors might be different. The wood wouldn't be so smooth because the dowel on the top is purchased from a store. And in the shed sticks, that green rod, and in that other green stick, those would be, it would have been collected out. So there's many differences, but the whole setup is the same. Our Navajo weaving, the way it's created on a vertical loom is the way our ancestors wove. And this is my clan sister. I'm teaching her how to weave, and she's about 13 years old, and she picked it up very fast. And her name is Cheyenne. So Cheyenne's grandmother is my sister. So in non-Navajo thinking, in non-Navajo thinking, because Cheyenne's grandmother is my direct sister. I'm also a grandmother to Cheyenne, but in Navajo clanship thinking, Cheyenne is born for Coyote Pass clan, and I'm also born for Coyote Pass clan. So that makes Cheyenne and me sisters. So back home, her mom and her dad, they tease us and they say that we're twins. They'll tell me, your twin sister Cheyenne wants to learn how to weave or is playing in a concert, and they in turn will tell her, your twin sister Tanaba is traveling somewhere. So, you know, that's just kind of it may seem confusing, the clan kinship, but it's very special. It plays a special role in our lives. So here I was teaching my twin sister Cheyenne how to weave. And this was her progress, which is very interesting because it seems like there's a dimension, it's dimensional. If you allow your eyes to just see that, it seems like the diamond could either be a little bit further back or front. There's a little bit of a dimension in this, which was really neat when I saw her weaving this. So this was her progress. So sometimes I'm thinking, and this is a part of my growth as a weaver, I'm wanting to create different patterns, and not necessarily like, I guess, traditional, like maybe a cross or graduating colors from white to sunset. You know, I'm trying to create something that's like doodling, that's just kind of fun, that's kind of whimsical. So this was my my approach at that. And sometimes I feel like the trading post has created a strong criticism to our weavers, and they don't want the weavers to weave like this. They want the weavers to create something very perfect, very symmetrical. And this here is part of my creativity, kind of me maybe stretching as a weaver, just pushing the boundaries kind of, and playing with colors, seeing how colors pop when they're put beside each other. So there's a lot of things happening here with this. I was just kind of playing with that aspect. And this here is a small sampler of what you call a wedge weave. If you look very closely, you can see the bottom stripes. They're at an angle. Their place, the weft, is at an angle. And when I got done with that, it created a wedge. And then I started again from the other side and worked my way up. This type of weaving is a very traditional type of weaving that our ancestors did. And you don't see this very often. So part of my independent study I've seen wedge weavings, of course, not like these colors, but I've seen wedge weaving, and I'm reminded that that our people were very brilliant, very sophisticated at that time, because they didn't only create simple weavings, but there's technicality in that. And which brings me to acknowledge that a lot of our people in the different indigenous cultures, we are connected to science. We are connected to mathematics. We are connected to the many different disciplines. Our way of life in the desert just didn't exist, doing nothing. There was, I'm sure there was many tasks, many experiments. There was a lot of knowledge there. And so my job now is to research that and to share that with my community. So it's very enriching when you begin to practice some of these traditional patterns. It's very gratifying, and there's a self, like you just appreciate yourself, and then you appreciate your past. You think about your ancestors and this way of weaving, because of how it was made. The loom, the Navajo loom, the deities created it very special for our people. Each part of the loom represented different part of the universe. And in that way, when a Navajo weaver is weaving on a Navajo loom, it's almost like we're doing a prayer. We're practicing, we're engaging a conversation with the loom, the spirit of the loom. And so it's very powerful. This here is another type of weaving that I wanted to create like a landscape, and I wanted to create mountains and then a water. I found that trying to weave water is one of the hardest techniques to do. I mean, the realism of it, to try to create it in realistic, like a realistic image. And the rolling hills also, and then the mountains in the back, and then finally the sunset. I'm so amazed about the sunset and the sunrises, and that's what also keeps me healthy. Because when I see the magnificent sunset happening, it seems like there's just a short period of time where that show happens. It's like a show, a grand show of the day. And if there's clouds in the sky, and depending on what's happening, it's just so grandiose. And I think being a weaver, that's also how I connect. I connect with the earth. And when I see this beautiful sunset, it doesn't last long. Some sunsets, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, some maybe 1 minute, 30 seconds. But just to see that unfold and to appreciate what nature has created for us, what our deities, what our creator has made for us, it's really special, it's powerful. So that's what I was trying to create here with that sunset there. So part of my, what I find very healthy and motivating for me as a fiber artist is I like to, my mind is just thinking constantly about fiber. What can you do with wool? I have some carded wool here. And I'm always wondering what can be done with wool. And one of the things I learned was you can do hand felting. And this is a sample of what I've made. This is a scarf, and those black lines that you see, and then the red ones also that are going down, those actually are sweatshirts, t-shirts that I cut up, and I recycled it. And those round circles also are pre-made felt that I put on it. So that's one way that I feel that I'm doing my part. I'm trying to walk many different paths. And one of them also, I'm concerned about the climate. I'm concerned about the overuse of many things. And I'm part of that problem as well. But one way to recycle some of that material is to use it in something like this. So this is a scarf that I created, and I hand felted it, and I cut up t-shirts and sweats, sweat tops in different shapes, and I put it in there. And I sell these at art shows to this is my main source of making a living, as being a weaver and also doing different types of art. And this is hand felting again, and it's kind of like a collar. I want to say necklace, but I want to say a bib also, but it's not a bib. It's just something to keep you warm, and it's hand felted, and you can turn it around also. So you see on the right side that it's and underneath it, that's what it looks like, the right image. Yoke. Okay, I think I saw a message, the yoke. So this is what it looks like in the beginning, that prior photo. I was putting things on it, and then I put a silk material on top of it, and I did the felting.
Do you want me to move forward or stay on this slide?
You can go forward. Yeah. And this is a triangle loom. And this loom here is a loom that I got from my mother, Sarah. She's the one who introduced this type of weaving to me. And this weaving here, its home is in Europe. My understanding is the Vikings, was their type of weaving here. So you use one strand to create the weft going horizontally as well as the warp going vertically. So they come in different shapes. You can have a triangle loom, rectangle loom, a square loom. And I just got so fascinated with this that I end up getting me a large triangle loom as well as a square loom and a rectangle loom, actually. So this one is in process, and you'll see if you go to the next slide, and you'll see garments made from this. This is a triangle weaving scarf, which is made on a very smaller scale. It's only 3 feet wide, and it's made, you can see it's fuzzy. There's a lot of fuzzy hair on it, and I put mohair along with this. So it creates a very warm neck scarf. And this is something else that I created. My intent was to create texture, because that's what I'm fascinated about. Is I like to see a two-dimensional texture. And I did a plain weave with this, and then I also added carded wool like this. Like this is a rolag. I added this in there, and that's what created those bubbles. And this one here, if you look at it's the tassels on it, the fringe, I use the outer coat of the sheep. If you can remember the photograph of the sheep, they're long-haired. They're very long-haired, and that's the outer coat. What you see is the fringes. So they're kind of solar dyed. They're like a blonde color, the tips of them. So I wanted to use everything from the sheep's wool. So that's how I was able to come up with the fringes like this. And this here is something like that yellow yolk, that previous picture of that kind of like the yolk. But this here it's made more like at an angle. And then I after I hand felted it, I added embellishments of different stones and in different colors. And this here is done on a rectangle loom, and it's a scarf. It's like about 8 feet in length. They call these scarves Voyager scarf, and that again, see how I like to do study and research. And a lot of the mountain men, my understanding is that they used to, their type of garb was similar to this, like a long belt that they wore at their dances, that they tied up their blankets with, that they pull their canoes with. So this is kind of that style. Using four different colors. So before I got into felting, well, actually, last week I was studying. That's another way that helps keep me healthy as a weaver and as a fiber artist, is to learn different techniques of what happens to wool in the felting process. I like to create texture, as I mentioned, and so I was playing with that. So I have to make swatches, smaller pieces, just to see what happens. And then that way, I can, if it comes out the way I want it, I can use that same process in a bigger project. And I like these small little like swatches. They're just the size of maybe almost like a sheet of paper. And here's another, like a felted necklace. I didn't embellish this one. This one just has swirls on it. Kind of reminds me like maybe of the solar systems. That's what I was thinking about. And what you see, if you look closely in those swirls, is those are hand spun. Those are hand spun wool, similar to what I have here. I have a spindle here. And this strand here is what that pattern is. So I'm gonna just kind of show you what I'm doing here. You have to twist the wool, and then this is a Navajo spindle. It's a small traveling spindle. It has a shaft, and then it has a disc kind of at the bottom. And the top here, you use your fingers to twist, to move this staff. And then you slowly guide your hand up. See how I'm doing? And when you're done spinning, you can put it on the spindle. And start, and this spindle here is what our creation story tells us, how our Navajo spindle was created for our Navajo people. I don't know how our time frame is.
We're doing good. We have about 20 minutes or so we can leave some time, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So we can leave time
Okay.
open for questions as people are commenting you on the chat and really appreciate.
Oh, okay, let's go to the next slide. And this is my little granddaughter helping me, and you can kind of see what's happening with the felting process. I have like a big cookie sheet, and I'm using bubble wrap, and this is the underside of that previous felted necklace that we saw. And it's wet. What happens is you get layers of wool, maybe like this. You can see through this. You lay it down, and you get another one, and you lay it the opposite direction. You make about 5 layers, and then you put it with water, and you get soap, olive soap, and saturate it and gently agitate, and it becomes a fabric. The pieces of wool, it looks under a microscope, it looks like a barbed wire, and they migrate together and they create one solid piece of fabric. And that's what you see there in this image. And she wants to get in on it to see what I'm doing. So I put her on my lap, and we have to, after it comes together, then we can start touching it like that. And this here is a little felted bowl that I made. And if you look inside, you can see circles. And I think I brought that. I ended up using that. I have that here. And I'm using it as my little cord container case. So I don't, so it just kind of looks nice. So that's what you can make also. The beautiful thing about our thinking, the ability of our thinking, is whatever we set our mind to, we can learn it. And now we can go to YouTube. It's accessible. Or we can check out a book at a library, and they're in different steps on how to create something like this. Or if you wanted to learn how to spin Navajo style hand spinning, you could learn that. Next slide.
Trying to find
And this is a triangle loom poncho that I did on my square weaving, square loom. And then the wool is all hand spun from my sheep. And then the next slide. And then this is another one. This is a little bit larger. And then I use different colors, dark brown, chocolate brown in here. And then I also embellished with beads. You can see on the images on the side of the model. There's an up close image of the weave. It's kind of like a loose weave, but if you wash it and kind of agitate it, it felts together. Next slide. And then this is another poncho that I just created, but it doesn't have an angle. I made it where the bottom, I didn't do a complete angle on this one. And this is the last slide. This is me and my sheep wishing you those words. This was just the other day. It's cold at the house. Yeah, out in the desert, the sun is shining, but it's probably 27, maybe 25, still chilly for me.
Latanaba, there's been a lot of great compliments in the chat, but I also want to open it up because I find that a lot of the sharing that you've had with us this afternoon, the wisdom in your sharing and your teaching reminds us to maintain healthy activities to keep us on a good journey and a good path, and the connection of your weaving, your culture, your tradition, prayer life, all those aspects are really important to staying on a good path. And I know there are a lot of wonderful folks out there who have questions and concerns. I'll go through the chat, but if you have a question, you're welcome to raise your hand in the chat, unmute yourself, and ask questions of Tanaba as I get ready to go through. I'm looking at people are talking about the the temperature outside. It is cold. Some people are asking.
Hi, this is Jean. I have a question.
Go ahead, Jean.
Tanaba, I really appreciate the generosity of your knowledge. Ahia, or in my language, Pidamaya. My children, their Nelly is from Crystal, and Sinajini is their clan, and so but they grew up here in South Dakota. We're in the north, but so my daughter, she's picked up weaving. And she wants to make her Nelly made saddle blankets, and where she did the diamond was the different color on the back side than the front side. We're way up here in South Dakota. What would you suggest for her to try and look up that weaving for saddle blankets?
Right now, I know on Facebook, there's a lot of people, a lot of our Dene people that there's a resurgence of twill weaving. Twill weaving is a very higher level type of weaving. However, there is different people like Nakyle Begay. If you look him up on Facebook, he's a teacher. Another person is, I believe his name is Zephyrin Anderson. He is also a teacher. Eileen Nagel also is I believe a twill weaver teacher. But if you also just get on the internet and type in Navajo twill weave, I believe you will find some patterns, and you might even find it under a book that the author is Rachel Brown. It'll only give a couple of twill weaving patterns on there. But and then also I'm a beginner learning about twill weave, and it is a higher level of weaving that requires focus, dedication, and almost coming back to the homeland and maybe getting instruction one-on-one with somebody might be best if you can do that.
Oh, that's excellent advice. And I wrote down all those names. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you. You just inspired me. I'm trying to, in my community, teach about beadwork, because you're right. When you learn a craft and keep your hands, you teach your hands to learn. And I think that does make a better person. So I wrote that down, and that's my new theme for 2023. Pitamaya.
Thank you, Jean. Anybody else have a question or a comment even that you'd like to unmute yourself and share with our presenter today?
Taniba, thank you so much. I was just enthralled watching and learning. I wanted to ask you about the felting. You had talked about the triangular weave being of Scandinavian or European descent. Is the felting? What's the origins of the felting?
Yeah, I think the origin of the felting, there's many roads. I think every Indigenous group, even non-Indigenous group, knew the art of felting. My understanding with felting in the Navajo culture is a lot of our people would get the wool from the sheep and they would put it in their moccasins, and that constant rubbing, and I'm sure the sweat, because you kind of need some moisture, it created soles in there. Yeah. So I know a lot of the Mongolian people, they are fabulous felters. And also just kind of depends. I think each group, they felt differently. Like I think like some of the felters from Ukraine, they're creating felting that's lightweight, that's kind of garment, like dresses, thin coats. And then the people like from Mongolia are creating like jackets, outer, thicker, heavy wear, and using wool that has a lower micron count, which means the diameter of the wool is bigger. Therefore, it can last longer. However, if you use wool with a smaller diameter, one sliver of wool, that's good for like lightweight clothing. Depends on where, I think for your locality, the region is. So I think felting, because fiber, no matter we where we come from, whether we're Indigenous or not, I believe, it is my opinion, that we pay this fiber, this way of the fiber of hand spinning, carding, braiding. We pay that. We ought to honor that, because we are here because of that. Civilization is here because of the people who've been hand spinning wool, who've been carding wool, who've been weaving wool, making sandals, making coats, making mittens, making blankets. And then there's different facets like the felting, different methods of it.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. Some people were asking for Taniba's contact information, so I'm going to put that in the chat as well. If you want to contact her directly, you're welcome to see how you can connect with her for future events or information about the materials that she makes, her weaving, her passion for carrying on this tradition. She's a 5th generation Navajo weaver and is now teaching a 7th generation, her granddaughter. So it's really important work that we continue. Like Jean said, finding a way to keep our hands busy is important. When we keep our hands, our minds, our bodies on a healthy path, that's a way of prevention, keeping ourselves connected to our culture. And Steve is calling you a weaving warrior. It's important. Her name, the Ba, this is something I remember, speaks to being a warrior. And Tanaba is a very specific kind of warrior. You want to explain that to us, Tanaba?
Yes, my name, I have a Navajo traditional name, which is Tkatnaba. And my paternal grandmother gave that name to me. When she gave that name to me when I was about 5 years old, she said, we visit her, and I started playing with the wool, teasing it. I was only 5 years old, and my parents told me to stop. And they said that they didn't want me to destroy the wool, or what she was doing. But my grandmother said, let her play with that, because I'm going to give her her name, and her name is going to be Tatnaba. But I'm going to add on to that. I want her to become a weaver. So I'm going to add the word, the weaver, onto Tkatnaba. So she said, her name is going to be Tkatnaba Ohogi, which means going into battle with weaving. That's what it means. And all woman Navajo names have a connotation to battle. And the prefix of it is the verb that tells how are they going in there. If they're, I don't know, like my grandmother, her name was Itanisba, which means kind of like meshed in the war. And then my niece's name is Desba. That means went to war. So my Tkatnaba means in the war, but Tkatnaba Ohogi means coming into battle with her weaving. Yeah, that last phrase there, I believe my paternal grandmother, she saw tremendous changes in her life. She saw the automobile come in. She saw the wagon come into her community, then the automobile. And then so I can only just think that she probably was worried for my generation. And maybe it was her hope that my granddaughter is going to carry this on. I often believe that she prophesized my way of life. And today, it's amazing. My lifestyle in this modern world, I'm ranching sheep, and I'm able to be a full-time weaver. And now, I mean, some of the things you heard, it might sound romantic. Oh, it's a very nice. It is nice, but it is a lot of work. And that, I think that work, that exercise, that activity keeps me healthy, keeps me on my toes. But it is a lot of work, and it's my medicine. It's my medicine to keep me healthy.
So true, Tanaba. Thank you so much. Yeah. Any other comments? We have a few more minutes to stay on the line for those of you who are able. I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us and listening to our presenter, our expert. Steve, you keep shaking your head. Steve Hendrick.
Yeah, lots of great stuff. I'm just kind of soaking it all in. I don't have too much to say. I just remember previous jobs ago, I worked with some at-risk youth and we taught them weaving and spinning more in the traditional Western way. But there's just so much to it, and thinking about it. And then when you think about just how essential it is for, besides the people that live kind of next to the equator, we all kind of need clothing. So it's one of those essential things of civilization. And it's just kind of really fascinating to think about. And particularly me being in the outdoors and stuff, wool has really some really high benefits of being, it doesn't smell as much, it insulates from wet and stuff like that. So kind of some of those natural materials I still think are sometimes superior and stronger than our modern day Gore-Tex and everything like that. So just fascinated by it. So just really just awesome presentation, and also the analogies of weaving, just the metaphors for life. And I guess, and I just think just so much about how essential hobbies are, whatever they are, beneficial hobbies that can create something that's actually practical, and also just really be an amazing self-care aspect to ourselves. So yeah, I don't have too much questions or comments, but just great presentation.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else on the line have any last thoughts or questions? I do want to thank you all for sticking with us for this last hour. This is the second session in our series of being a good relative, looking for ways to maintain a healthy lifestyle during these cold winter months. Some of us are saying it's -47 in Fairbanks, 27 in Navajo Nation, and depending on where you're at, it may be a little bit warmer. It's really important that we find healthy ways to keep ourselves actively engaged, keeping ourselves safe, and engaging our young people. I think it's a great example when we can invite and have our young people participate in learning. They may not be experts yet, but just as Tanaba's paternal grandmother prophesied her to be a weaver, we see her not only sharing her talent with us, but with her family and her granddaughter, and winning an award from the National Endowment Arts. So it's amazing what our culture can do for us and for the larger community. It's so important to keep ourselves connected during this time. I want to look at the last few comments on the chat as I share one more slide with you all, because I know some of you have been asking about things in the presentation. Some of the links, I try to put them up. Oops. In the chat box. But here are some important things you may want to click on if you can, or look for. If you want more information about our center, the prevention office is just one of several that we have at the Native Center for Behavioral Health at the University of Iowa. So you're welcome to send us an email to our center, and they'll direct it to either myself in the prevention office. I have one of my colleagues, Steve Steiney, on, who oversees our addiction transfer center. We have a mental health center, a K-12 supplemental mental health area. And we also have our trauma stress initiative, category 2, with children. And so it's really important that we find, as professionals serving our Native communities, ways that we can help us engage in healthy activities. And this session is just the second in a series. We'll have 2 more in January and 2 more in February. The registration links are open on the screen for you, with January 17th focusing on art and traditions. And then at the end of January, we'll have songs and storytelling. Again, looking at healthy aspects to keep ourselves actively engaged and connected to our culture. The link to our survey is here on the screen, as well as the QR code. It's really important that you help us find ways to know what we're doing well, and let us know how we can improve on the services that we offer to our communities. So if you can take the time to do that, the surveys are anonymous and cannot be linked back to you. It's really important that you help us understand what your needs are in your tribal communities and how we can continue to serve each of you in the work that you do. Sunny, can you clarify which link you're looking for? The link to the information. Sunny, are you still with us? And I'll put the link in there. Is it the email address maybe, Sunny?
I think you just want you to put that slide back up if you can.
I will.
Allison, okay.
There we go. Thank you. Does that help? The top one is our email address to our center, and the people who receive that will direct it to whichever services you need for your community. The registration links for the January 17th and January 31st are up here on the screen also. And then the link to our survey. Remember, you'll be getting a copy of this presentation the slide deck as well, and the recording. So make sure that you look out for that in your email inbox. It usually takes about 2 weeks. I don't want to promise you any exact dates because we're in the midst of closing out the year, and some people who help us out in that technology world maybe taking a break from the office. So please bear with us, but I know you'll get it before January 17th.
Allison, pardon me, they're just requesting that if you can, just cut and paste the survey link into the chat. So I think they're having trouble clicking on it
Okay.
on the screen. I don't think it's an active link. But I think if we get it in the chat, then folks can
Click
grab
on
that
it.
survey. There's a QR code too. If you do have a cell phone, you can just scan that QR code and it'll take you to the registration link or the survey link.
I'm trying to paste it. Bear with me just a moment.
Yeah, you may have to Control V to get it in there.
Copy link. There you go.
Yes.
Thank you all. Well,
Thanks,
we're just
everybody.
about 1 minute over schedule. So I want to say thank you one more time. Nalit Sam, Ahiha. Have a great, safe holiday. Take care of yourselves, and we look forward to seeing you in January.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.